want to do factoring or square root method. However, will that always work? No, only if your quadratic equation is factorable, or something that we can do the square root, so only 1x. So we have to have other options for those equations that cannot be factored. Now, completing the square is probably not anybody's go-to method. You probably learned it in Algebra 2 and didn't really use it a whole lot. You probably went with quadratic formula in the case where you couldn't factor. However, it does have a place when we're talking about graphing with transformations. This comes into play. So there are situations where we need to have these skills. So we can't just skip it. We need to know how. So in order to do completing the square, it has to be set up a certain way. You need to have a coefficient of 1 on your square term. So if it's any other number, you have to divide by it. That might lead to some fractions, and that's okay. We want the constant on side of an equal sign by itself. So you'll have to bring your constant over. And then we want to make a perfect square. So when I say a perfect square, we think like x minus 2 squared. If you FOIL that, it goes to x squared minus 4x plus 4, right? If I said x plus 3 squared, goes to that. If I said x minus 4 squared. So these are perfect squares. We want to make something like this right-hand side so that we can factor it like the left. In these, you'll notice if you take this middle term, divide it by 2 because it factors in 2 parentheses, and square it, you get that number. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. Okay, if I take half of 6, 6 divided by 2 is 3. When I square that, I get the 9. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. When I square that, I get the 16. So we will have the x squared and the x. We have to figure out what that constant is that we need to add on. Since it's an equation, we'll add it to both sides of the equal sign, and then we will end up with something that we can factor and then solve. Okay, so we are using the patterns that show up in these perfect squares to make our own so that we can factor it. Any questions so far? So let's look at a problem. Can I just factor this nicely? Is there anything that multiplies to negative 14 and adds to negative 4? No, so we can't do that option. Okay, step 1 of completing the square says we need this to be a 1x squared. Do we have it? Yeah, so we get to skip step 1 and go to step 2. We need to move the constant to the other side. So this becomes x squared minus 4x. I'm going to leave a little space, say equals 14. Now, we have to make a perfect square. So to do that, we take our middle term, which is negative 4. We know that when we FOILed, that came from 2 different parentheses, right? So we divide it by 2, and we square it. So it's always your b term divided by 2 squared. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4, so we add 4 to each side. This should factor. What multiplies to 4 and adds to negative 4? Negative 2 and negative 2. So we could write it as x minus 2 squared. it will always factor into a square like this because it's a perfect square. You'll notice minus 2, isn't that what we had before we squared? Negative 4 divided by 2 was negative 2. How does this help? Now we can do the square root method. So we do square root with that plus and minus. So x minus 2 equals plus and minus. How would I break down 18?
3 square root 2.
So final step, we add over the 2, so we get 2 plus or minus 3 radical 2. Questions on that? Try enough. What do we do first?
Move 2 over to the other side.
Hmm.
Negative 2.
Alright, first step is always to get a 1x squared, but we have it. So we're ready to just move the constant. Now we have to make our perfect square. So how do we do that?
Take -3 divided by 2 and square it.
Okay. That doesn't reduce. Negative 3 squared is positive 9, 2 squared is 4, so that's 9 over 4. And it's an equation, so whatever you add to one side, you have to add to both. Okay. We have built a perfect square, so this should factor into something squared. Trying to figure out what it is. We're essentially asking ourselves what multiplies to 9/4 and adds to negative 3. Think about on the last one, wasn't that number the same thing we had before we squared it? So, negative 3 over 2. Two plus 9 over 4 is 17 over 4. So then what do? Square root. That we always do a plus and a minus. So x minus 3 over 2 equals plus or minus. We can do the square root of the top and bottom separately. Can we do the square root of 17? So that stays. What's the square root of 4? So it's a square root of 17 over 2. Final step, we add that over. So 3 halves plus and minus square root of 17 over 2. So a little less pretty that time, since we had some fractions. Are there questions on any of that? We're going to do another one together, and then I may have you guys try some. where do we begin on this one? Okay. We don't have a 1x squared, so everything gets divided by 2. Twelve over 9, we have 4 over 3. Next step. Now, we have to make a perfect square. So it's your middle term divided by 2 and squared. What is negative 4/3 divided by 2? So when we square that, negative 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9. So this should factor into something squared because we made a perfect square.
2/3.
Is it plus or minus?
Plus, no, minus.
Basically, since this was a minus, that would be a minus. Okay. Negative 1 is negative 9 over 9 plus 4 over 9. Be negative 5 over 9. That we always do plus and minus. Square root of negative 5, what would we write?
5
Square root of 9 is 3. So we get 2/3 plus and minus I radical 5 over 3. Doing okay? I'm going to give you guys a couple to try. Okay. So the first one, what'd you do?
I skipped to E.
You what?
I accidentally skipped straight to E.
Oh, you didn't even do it.
I didn't even do it.
What should we do first? So we get x squared minus 2x equals negative 7 over 4. Since the constant's already on this side, we're ready to make our perfect square. So think about our pattern. It's always half of the middle term squared. So negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. So this factors into what? Negative 7 over 4 plus 1, so negative 7 over 4 plus 4 over 4, negative 3 over 4. Get rid of a square, use square root, plus and minus. Square root of negative 3, and square root of 4. So x is 1 plus or minus I radical 3 over 2. Alright. How did do on that one? Everyone except John Paul.
I did totally my fault.
I made the most stupid mistake with it, and I noticed it just now.
At least you found your mistake.
Oh, even though I had it written down, couldn't tell until that when I beat the answer.
That would make a problem. What do we have to do on E? So x squared minus 11x plus 6 equals 0. Bring over the 6. I guess we haven't been talking, but could we factor this one nicely? No. So never hurts to check, but it's not going to work. If you have one that would have factored nicely and you do complete the square, at the end you'll have something like 5 plus or minus 2. And you could go ahead and simplify it. 5 plus 2 and 5 minus 2. So you'll get the same answer at the end. So half of the middle term. Square. So that doesn't reduce. So if we square it, that's 121 over 4. So this factors into x. When we divide by 2, it was just minus 11 halves. Squared. Negative 6 is negative 24 over 4 plus 121 over 4. So 97 over 4. Square root plus or minus. So x minus 11 halves equals plus or minus. Can you break down the square root of 97? No. Square root of 4 is 2. So final answer 11 halves plus or minus square root of 97 over 2. Alright. When I was walking around, some of you have it, some of you are having a little trouble still. So let's do another one. I want you guys to try it on your own, and let's see if we can get it. Are there any questions on these problems? Should we try this? This is actually that. So we get x squared plus 5/3 x minus 2/3 equals 0. Add over the 2/3. So we do the middle term divided by 2 and squared it. So 5/3 divided by 2 is 5/6. Square it, you get 25 over 36. So far, so good? So then, this should factor into a perfect square. So we have x. After we divided by 2, it was a positive 5/6. So x plus 5/6 squared. 2 plus 25, 2 over 3 plus 25 over 36. So it would be 49 over 36. Square root, plus and minus. So x plus 5 over 6 equals plus or minus the square root of 49 is 7, square root of 36 is 6. Then what do we do? Okay, what do you notice about those? Yeah, they're like terms. We can work this out. Negative 5/6 plus 7 over 6 and negative 5 over 6 minus 7 over 6. So when we add, we get 2 over 6 or 1/3. When we subtract, we get negative 12 over 6 or -2. Why did this one turn out to have a nice answer?
Because,
Because yes. At the very beginning, would slip and slide have worked with this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would have had an x squared plus 5x minus 6, and that factors. So since we could have done slip and slide, that gave us a nice answer. We got the nice answer from completing the square. Okay, I want to give you guys time to start your homework so that if you're having trouble, you can ask. So there's a Math Excel assignment. It is not very long, but I'm asking you please do completing the square so that you're practicing that method. Don't try to do anything else. Do it by completing the square like the directions say.